A great question in many ways. We believe that our vocation to priesthood really comes from God and that it is God's will for us as priests. But a huge component to answering the call is discerning that will and coming to understand what it is God wants us to do with our lives. For my own self, I did not always want to be a priest. When I was growing up, I envisioned myself getting married and having kids. I grew up in a large family. I'm the youngest of 5 kids. I thought it would be pretty cool to have a bunch of kids myself and aspired to do so. When I was a freshman in college, however, I began to believe that God might be calling me to the priesthood. And that was really inspired by a priest at Virginia Tech, where I was spending my freshman year. And I, through him, got to know a lot more about the priesthood than I had previously understood. When I was growing up here in the Archdiocese of Baltimore, I grew up at Our Lady of the Fields Parish in Millersville and had a wonderful pastor there, Monsignor Frank Lynn, who was a very holy man and a great instrument of God's mercy, God's healing, and celebrator of the sacraments. But I will admit that I didn't know him particularly well. I was an altar server and I was engaged in the youth group at the parish. My family was involved in the parish in many different ways and had grown up really around the church and around priests. We had many great examples of priesthood too that assisted Monsignor Lynn at Our Lady of the Fields. One such regular weekend assistant was Father Tim Dolan, who then went on to become Monsignor Tim Dolan, the rector of the North American College, where I would ultimately go to seminary, and is now the Cardinal Archbishop of New York. He is a great hero of mine and gave a lot of inspiration about priesthood when I was an altar server in my middle and high school years. But as I said, even at that point, I was not seriously considering priesthood, but really began to think about it as a freshman in college. As I went through my college years, I began to discern the call more seriously. And as a sophomore, I actually applied to the Archdiocese of Baltimore as a college candidate, we called them at that time. College candidates for the Archdiocese of Baltimore were permitted to either transfer to a college seminary or to remain at the university where they were already studying, which is what I chose to do. I had then transferred to the University of Maryland at College Park. I was involved in campus ministry there. I then, once accepted by the Archdiocese as a sophomore, became sort of like a regular seminarian in the sense that I had a couple of summer assignments as an intern during my last couple of years as a college student in a couple of our parishes here in the Archdiocese, and continued my discernment. So my call to the priesthood, I do believe absolutely came from God. When I discerned that I felt God was really calling me and I applied to the Archdiocese, I had an overwhelming sense of peace. And to me, that was the marker that the call was real, because that sense of peace, when I said yes to that discernment, has never left me, never to this day. Not to say that every single moment of my life has been peaceful for sure, but the abiding sense of peace in saying yes to doing God's will as a priest has always been with me from that moment.